Have you ever had one of those moments where you just knew something, or maybe you just kept seeing the same signs over and over again and wondered, is the universe trying to tell me something? What if we're all receiving guidance all the time? We're just not always sure how to recognize it. Today's guest has spent more than 2 decades helping people connect with the loving guidance that's always available. Mark Mezadourian is an intuitive specializing in connecting with angels and guides, as well as a spiritual teacher who helps people access their own intuition with heart-centered practicality. Through intuitive readings, healing experiences, guided meditations, and workshops, Mark helps people clear old patterns, connect with spirit, and discover that we're never navigating life alone. Today, we're talking about angels, guides, intuition, healing, past lives, and how to begin recognizing the signs that may already be showing up in your own life. Let's get going. Hi, Mark. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you both.
Oh, we are so glad to have you. As we were just getting started, Robin and I were talking about how we're so excited because we've been hearing your voice. We've been listening to your meditations. And the one thing we keep saying over and over again, Mark, is that your voice has a resonance to it. So as you're getting into your meditations, there is almost this feeling of attunement that comes immediately
Hmm.
from the way you begin that meditation. And I know we're going to get into your journey, but I just want to
hmm
know from you, is that
hmm
something intentional that you do? And are you channeling when you do these sessions?
I appreciate the kind words. If there's like one overriding goal I have is to get out of the way and to focus on what do they say? What do the
Oh,
angels say? And this gets into, well, how do they talk? And it's not like this. And it's just seeing how could I get out of the way and just what is the tone and creating a held space, be that
Mhm.
on a recording, be that in a group, be that on Zoom or sort of like Insight Time, or just having a held space and that we recognize that. And I appreciate your recognition of that space and the fact that we're all hardwired for spirituality, that it's in us, that we could recognize that and really rapidly get into that space. Or if there's tension, that maybe 1% space happens. And we're not trying to kick open a door, but just to be authentic and to do the work, but to recognize who is this for? And what is the intention? What is the goal, which is to have a space that's kind and light that we could relax into, getting into long brain waves or regulated nervous system and letting ourselves reboot and to very consciously have the opposite experience than most of life right now, which is busy, which is mean and distracting. So just doing the exact opposite and recognizing in that how rapidly we could change, how rapidly we could have a different experience.
yes.
Could not have said it better because that is really what you feel when you start to participate, engage, listen to any of your guided meditations. You can feel that immediately. It's almost become a treat for me. I really
Oh, I
look
love that.
forward to it because there's
Mhm.
something that I have to say. Karen and I both listen to so many different types of guided meditations and experiences. And there's something extremely unique, special, all the things with what you are bringing to our lives. So I know we're going to get into that even
Mhm.
more, but I'm so glad you brought that up, Karen.
Yeah, I just wanted to start with that because it's something that washes over you. And for our audience who's listening and watching, I love starting there. So then we can get to your journey and all the things that you've done in your own life that has
Mhm.
gotten to that point. But just that little bit of you that Robin and I have taken away that has been so meaningful already. So let's get on to the rest of the
Sure.
interview.
But one point about this is about being of service. Is about being of service. Who is this for? It's for everyone.
Yes.
Knowing that not everyone's going to listen to it, not everyone's going to resonate with it, but just seeing the importance of all of us who are on this spiritual journey right now, that we have
Mhm.
so much in common, and that many of the commonalities that we have are we're used to solving everything. We're used to having a great level of hypervigilance and responsibility. And what's it like to have a space where those things aren't required?
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. And you can feel that. So
Yes.
when we talk about your journey, which did not begin with this lifelong spiritual practice, it was really a difficult time in your life that ended up opening you up to something bigger,
Yeah,
different, however we want to put it. Can you talk about that?
sure. My family's naturally intuitive, but there was no logic to it. There was no technique to it. But my grandmother and my great aunt both, they read coffee grounds and things like that. When my grandmother's mother died, she saw angels around her. So there's this underlying spirituality, but just no technique to it. And when I was 30, my grandmother died, and that was a seismic shift in my life. She was a force of unconditional love in my life. And I was working at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which was a 6-day week, 12-hour at least day. And I did not process that. And then after that fall, that winter, I went to Europe on a trip and started to process her passing, had all these spiritual experiences that were new. And I came back from the trip and I left my apartment in the care of a couple. I knew the guy more. And unknown to me, they broke up the day after I left, and the woman went on a drug binge in my apartment. So I came back and my apartment was essentially destroyed. And there was this super negative energy there. And so I threw her out, but I started to clean up the place. But a couple of days later, I had an anxiety attack, right? A voice in my head saying, drive off the road, Mark, it'll make it better, which was just, I was freaking out. So I stayed at my girlfriend's house, but I slowly started to cleanse my apartment and I didn't know what to do. And I had advice from a spiritual minded person, none of which I would do now, but it helped at the time to, do this and that. But also I was advised, call an Archangel Michael. So I chose this time and space to claim my apartment. And I went in and had the citrus and was playing Gregorian chant music and called an Archangel Michael. And I ended up yelling, get the bleep out of my apartment. And my apartment had a long hallway. There was the bedroom where I was in and the living room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw this black bear thing in the living room. I was holding this glass bowl and I instinctively threw it down the hall. It landed in the center of the room, did not break. The toilet flushed and the thing was gone.
Stop it. Stop it.
All this is
Got
true.
the goosebumps from head to toe.
Exactly. But it was like, wow. And it was just like, well, what happened?
Oh my God.
What happened?
Yeah.
So just for real, what happened? And so I go to work, I come back, and one of the things that was wrong with the apartment was the electricity was all haywire from all the drug energy and all the bad energy. And when I came back, like the radio was on, the heater was on. So it just got into this space of what happened, how does that work, and let's do more.
Wow.
Yeah. So we get into spirituality through suffering or insight.
Totally.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just saying this was like this super dramatic thing. And also I'm a recovering cynical person. And so this started this journey of, rather than like, oh, here's all these books about angels and here's how this works. My interest was, well, what did they say? How did they operate? And so getting out of the way and having no influence and not, basically getting over the cynicism, but having this experience that was life-changing and just saying, how do you communicate with them? How does that work? What do they talk about? How do they talk? All those different things. How do they communicate? So I started to have these spiritual experiences of waking up every single morning at 4:44, which is an angel number on my digital clock, and just having all these different things with license plates and just starting to have contact with them through songs and such. I get a lot of guidance through songs and just having that relationship there. So that's the dramatic origin story.
That is a dramatic origin
It is.
story.
It
Sorry,
is.
Mark. And that, boy, got your attention for sure.
Got my attention. Mhm.
Well, and it really showed you what is possible. And so, what I want to point out for people is that you did get to this point where you're like, I will try this experience. It can't hurt me for me to go into my apartment with this aroma and chanting. Like those things they're possible for most of us to try.
Sure.
And so for then you to get such an actual like physical and then
Visceral.
visceral reaction. Yes.
Yeah.
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 Can I ask you too, Mark?
Sure.
What made you call on Archangel Michael.
I called on him before. My mother's very spiritual. She's of more of following different faiths and such. But in the past, I'd called in Archangel Michael, and that book, The Book of Angels by Sophie Burnham, I'd had that. So they weren't unfamiliar to me. It just wasn't integrated into my daily life. And my apartment felt bad. I did not want to be there. And so the idea of calling him in felt comforting. And also, as you were just saying, Robin, like, why not? So I kind of throwing the kitchen sink at the situation. But to me, like, none of the other things I did, maybe the music helped for vibration for sure. But having a citrus in the corner, maybe not, now, but just with calling in Archangel Michael and having that intention.
Yeah.
Recognize now the intention of like, this is my apartment. Get the bleep out.
That's unbelievable.
So Michael, is he the angel of protection?
Protection and clearing. Yeah.
And we're going to get into how you would define angels and so forth. But before we do you want to touch on the fact that you come from the world of theater, and how has that helped shape the way that you communicate with spirit today and as a foundation in your life? How does that help in what you're doing now?
That's an excellent question. The main thing we're doing in theater is understanding and uncovering the unspoken truth. And that is the core of spirituality, especially when there's an issue present, which is what's not said, what's not on the surface. And this is the space that we could access, especially through guidance and such. So let's say in a reading or in a group, whatever, if there's an issue, what's actually happening, what has happened, and then also what's actually being said. And this also gets into mythology, family mythology. It's interesting in just hearing people speak, especially in readings for a long time, of hearing a story, well, then this happened, and so-and-so killed themselves and did it. And like, wait a minute, what happened? And so nothing gets overlooked. And also in any setting, our conversation now in a one-on-one setting, and especially in groups, that the sense of ritual, the power of gathering, the power of community, being incredibly important, having a communal experience. There's a great quote by the playwright Thornton Wilder, who wrote Our Town, which is, theater takes place in the perpetual present. That even a Shakespeare play from 400 years ago is alive right now. And just seeing where that is active in spirituality, which is the things that have happened in the past are active now. And this gets into ancestral healing and this and that and past life healing. But just how could we, at this moment of pervasive change for everyone, how could we have more lightness and kindness, and how to help with that? That's how theater is present in the work.
I've never heard it put that way before. And it's such an aha that there is so much unspoken truth, even when you're watching a play unfold.
Yeah.
That's the role of the actor, right? Is to lean in and really understand the full 360 scope of that character and what's happened, even though you and the audience may not be aware of it. What a beautiful translation.
Thank you.
Yeah. And an awareness of energy. I think when you're in those live experiences, having that as practice almost, that I can see how that would help.
For sure.
Because you're reading energy that whole time when you're.
The whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time. And the playwrights who understand that, there's a current playwright, a man named Jez Butterworth, who he has spirituality in his plays. Not overtly at times, but overtly sometimes. And his most recent play is called The Hills of California, which is about trauma. One event shaped, the lives of an entire family. And there's beauty in that.
Can we go back to the angels?
Yeah, sure.
I love that, because it's so rare for us, I think, to see someone with the depth of the relationships that you have with angels, and even in listening to your meditation, how you call upon so many of them, I've never even heard of before. So can we just talk about what your definition of angels are and the types of angels that there are for those who don't know?
Sure. So if we think of, there's a huge universe of guides, and angels are part of that. And perhaps we define angels as unconditionally loving beings. And where we get hung up on the thing we did wrong in 1987 and this and that they don't. So we are used to conditional love. We're used to, I'll love you if, I'll love you when. And they don't do that. they truly love us unconditionally. And this is something for us to get used to. And also understanding that for some people, God is a trigger word. I have part of my family's hyper religious, and there was a figure who's now passed who was mean and very judgmental. And just seeing, and I realize now, being 58, what the hell? It's kind of
Totally.
so if you're so into your faith, why are you so unhappy? And why are you scaring kids? And just seeing where the limitation of that, and what's it like to be the exact opposite, which is in our connection with angels, it's very instructive in terms of, as I was mentioning a little bit before, of like, how do they talk? They're not hung up. And so just getting into a space of knowing the angels will find the open door. And if that is an angel, if that is a guide, a goddess, an ancestor, or artistic guides, David Bowie's a fantastic guide. The people we have affinity for, we have relationships already. And it's understanding that the mass communicators, be they poets or performers or musicians, painters, writers, that they make fantastic guides when they pass. So it's this seeing who you resonate with, but they will find the open door. Mm-hmm. So if we just notice for ourselves who resonates with us most.
Another beautiful way, because again, when you do your meditations, you're calling. I remember when one of them you called in Maya Angelou, and poets and people that I had never even. I mean, you think of them as inspiration in our lives. You don't always think of them as the angels that they are, or the souls that they are.
Yeah. Well, this gets into a thing of what happens when we pass.
Yes.
And that they are active. Maya Angelou is just a fantastic guide. Also, she went through every possible iteration of life during her physical life. And very simply, this continues, that they're not done. And also when people pass, they're in community and they want to connect with us, that they're here to help us out. And if we don't attach to, let's say how they transition or this or that, but just recognize the availability of that. And it's like a fingerprint. It's not cookie cutter. It's like, who resonates with you. I realized early on, I had a huge relationship with the band The Doors and Jim Morrison. And as I got into spirituality, he would come forward, not so much as the rock star, but as the poet, not so cocky, but just like this, hey, man, let's talk. And just seeing that I already had a relationship with him. So of course, and just then seeing also that everyone's available. And if we drop out of distance and time and just seeing who we want to talk to.
How did you discover that from that experience you had in that first experience you had in your apartment? How did you get to that point? At that point, you're like, okay, I can call upon Archangel Michael. That worked. Then how did you go from that to being able to welcome in other angels, but also, as you're saying, being able to call upon these artists and other figures?
I don't like rules. And so all the rules of this is the way this works, there's 7 tiers, like none of one in post that experience of asking the angels for help and recognizing who else came forward. My grandmother had passed and she would come forward. And so if we eschew the rules and get into order of like, all this love is here for us. And that was really interesting. And once again, of seeing like, well, how does this work? And then seeing the shortcomings of the folks who are working with one guide, because your ego could just slip in there, and just seeing like, isn't it great that there's this cornucopia of love here for us? There's all these different guides, and just seeing who resonates with you and the beauty of that and the simplicity of that. And also then in working with multiple guides, they're addressing the totality of us. And in terms of intuition, it's seeing, hearing, knowing, feeling. One guide might come through one way and another guide might come through another way. And so it's using the fullness of ourselves.
Yes, 100%. I love that. I'm just thinking about how the different meditations that I've done with you and the different guides and angels that you've brought in, and how they all have such a different feel. And I'm always amazed that I choose the specific one and it's exactly what I need. As we all know, we're attracting that in. I'm setting that intention to find that specific that meditation without knowing that that's exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And then there's so much diversity in what you bring forward. Like even the elementals come forward, animals.
Mhm.
So I think for maybe those listening who might have some of those religious translations in their minds when
Sure.
it comes
Yeah.
to angels, the point is there is so much there for
Hmm.
us. There is so much good, as you say, always that you're calling in that is there for us. It's not
Hmm.
just our spirit guide or our guardian angel. It's just this plethora of help and support. And as you keep saying, unconditional love that is always there for us.
I would
Hmm.
love to ask for those who do think of angels and typically probably think of archangels. How would you define the difference between an archangel and other angels or even guardian angels? How have they showed up for you?
In my exploration and building relationship with them, they never talk about hierarchy ever.
Oh,
So I think it's kind of a human thing, which totally makes sense of like, well, here's how it works. They never talk about that. I've learned also in doing groups for years and readings that there's no one definition to what a guardian angel is. I'm not going to say like, oh, that's not a guardian angel. That's not the conversation. It's like, great. And the fact that we have a lot of different guides is just fantastic. So if we once again come back to there's no rules, but there's structure. Well, who's around? Who's here? Who's here? And just the huge amount of guides that are here, but the ones that are really special to us, perhaps a grandparent, perhaps a parent, perhaps a loved one, perhaps a specific angel or guide. So just recognizing that they exist, and perhaps one of the things that we could do is get to know them. As
mm.
we build a relationship with them, we recognize, well, who's around all the time?
Can you give us
Yeah.
an example of how we can communicate with our angels? If I almost feel a little intimidated
I
sometimes,
understand.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Access is the hang up point with angels for sure. And I would like to change that entirely into making it easy. So we could very simply just say, thank you, angels, for being with me. And thank you, angels, for this wonderful conversation. Thank you, angels, for infusing all my encounters and environments with love today. Whatever it is that we want to say, but we get into conversation and recognizing that we do have free will and that angels aren't human, but there is a thing of us asking for help that's incredibly helpful and empowering. And if we ask for help, thank you, angels, for being with me during this day. Thank you for this wonderful conversation with Karen and Robin. Thank you for everyone who's going to listen and watch this, having great experience and feeling loved. All those intentions matter. But very simply, to trust that the angels are engaging with us with unconditional love, coming back to that we have this idea that they're judging us.
Yes, you're right.
And the joke I've come up with over the years is that we think they're French and they're going like, oh, they're asking like that they're disgusted with us. And the opposite is true. They're not, they're the opposite. It's their job and their joy to help us out.
I think for some of us, seeing them up in those big stained glass windows in the
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
right? And all
Yeah.
of that, that's kind of the image. I went to
Mhm.
Catholic school, so from a very little
Sure.
girl. So it's intimidating. Yeah.
Sure. But they love us. And this is where I think there's kind of three things, which is let's ask, and thinking that in the commonality of spiritual people, we know that more is possible. We know that to be true. And let's welcome all the help that we possibly can. So we might say, thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides, or thank you, Jim Morrison, thank you, David Bowie, thank you, Hilma Off Clint, thank you, Mary Oliver, thank you, Maya Angelou, whoever it is, thank you for being with me, and getting into conversation with them. And if we think of the biggest block to intuition is not asking, the second biggest block is expectation. So if we don't prescribe what should happen, that we put forward intention. Thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for helping me with that conversation that's coming up. Thank you for helping me to be safe. Thank you for my loved ones always being safe. Thank you for my being well, safe, and happy. All these different things. And not prescribe what should happen, but to notice what happens. And perhaps what is present in all this is the relief that comes by asking and engaging. Just that in itself. And recognizing the damage that has been done in the past, perhaps by religion and this and that, if we could just see angels as free agents and all the guides as free agents, And so perhaps they exist and perhaps different faiths adopt them, but just seeing that they are available to all of us. And if we just make contact with the ones that resonate with us the most. As mentioned, there's religious damage in my family. And so for years, this is funny now, it wasn't at the time, but people would say to me, "Oh, Jesus is with you." I'm like, "What the bleep does he want?" I had this really negative response, really negative response. And then 3 years, then I was like, "Okay, what do you want?" This really cool guy,
Right.
right? Wearing a suit,
I love that Jesus showed himself to you wearing a suit.
because they will come as we will best recognize them. So if I have all this damage of thinking like, why are you guys focused on 2000 years ago? Let's focus on now.
Yes,
I
totally.
don't mean to have judgment with this, but just seeing like what's actually present now.
Yes, you're right.
What's here now? And if we get rid of the rules and replace it with order, the order includes us being loved and seen and heard, and that we have access.
And that was the word I
Yeah.
was just thinking about. Literally, I was thinking about that word, is that we have access. And I think
Mhm.
some of that religious, or the way, maybe the way we've been raised, is
Yeah,
thinking that, oh my gosh, the world is so big and there's so many problems in the world. And who am I to ask for?
exactly.
And that accessibility word is so powerful, and that we're all worthy of it. I think that's the other.
We're used to a middleman, emphasis on the word man, that you got to go through someone else to get there. Let's take that off the table. And the worthiness thing, that coming back to unconditional love, and the idea that there's more pressing issues than what we might present. If we take all that off the table and recognize, once again, no rules. So the angels are unlimited, the guides are unlimited. They could be with all of us at once. They're not bound by time or space. So we have total permission to ask for help. And recognizing what that does is it makes our worlds bigger and it fills our hearts. So if we recognize what's missing in the world right now, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's
Yes.
just, there's a question like, why is everything so mean? Why? And just seeing the obsession with lack, hoarding and protecting bullies. And let's do the opposite, it just getting into things that are enraging of why in America is the number one killer of kids' guns. Why? Let's end that. Let's end that. Let's use intention about that and be intentional. All these different things, but recognizing there's a lot of things that are wrong. And let's use our intentionality. Let's use prayer to create a world where everyone's safe and no one gets lost. And that everyone is safe, especially kids.
Yes.
And that we ask more of people, especially men. This is the time where men get to grow up. And so we're witnessing perhaps the end of adolescent America. So in spiritual land, it is our conscious adult self who's engaging and trusting the power of our conscious adult self, which is that we're highly powerful and highly effective. So thank you, angels, for everyone in the world being safe. Thank you for neutralizing all weapons of aggression. Thank you for everyone being well, safe, and happy. So just seeing, coming back to access, there's one more quick point, which is let's just ask. Let's just ask. And if it works to work with an animal guide, like a dolphin or a bird, let's go for it. Whatever it is, whatever inclination that we have. And just
Yes.
start to have an experience.
I think one of the points I hope that people walk away with today, there's so many, but one is also to really start to think of angels outside of religion. I just think that it's almost like having to relearn, I think, for a lot of people. And that angels are accessible to all of us, no matter what religion you are. I think that unconditional love part, and that we all have access and we can ask, is huge.
I just want to make one more point about everything we're just talking about, which is that all the pain that we might have had is honored and that we find the open door for ourselves. And if angels are a trigger, let's talk to the raccoon.
Totally. Yes.
And let's talk to Carol Lombard or David Bowie or Freddie Mercury, whoever.
Or Richard Pryor, which actually
Richard Pryor.
I was actually quite happy came through.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, this is the thing in that it's like jazz. It's like we create a held space and just see like, hey, Richard, it's not planned. It's just seeing like who's here, but also in that, like who wants to talk to us?
That's right.
There's a blue whale one. Isn't that nice? The blue whale's there, the kind wolf. There's just lots of different guides.
Yeah. Can we talk about your intuitive readings, Mark, and
Mhm.
how you do this? I have a feeling you approach yours a little bit differently, just with all of this context that you've given us. But just talk us a little bit through how you approach those readings.
So readings, the goal is what's going to make that person's world bigger, and perhaps to create a space for an articulation of what they would like to have happen, as opposed to what's wrong. What would they like to experience? And that illuminates rapidly, like essentially what's in the way. And there's not one way this goes, but it's also trusting very simply intuition. What do they say? What do they bring up? I think readings aren't what people think. It is not at all I don't do predictive work at all, because so I think one of our traumas is the idea that it's all planned out. We're just clocking time, and someone
Right.
else is in charge. And if we invert that, what if we are in charge and get into a space of empowerment? And who is there to support us? How can we clear space and room, especially for sensitive people, which is everyone who's going to listen to this? What's it like to clear space, connect with an angel or a guide or a grandmother, and to let support happen? So all those different things are on the table in a reading. The main thing is that the person who's there feels seen and heard, and that they are enormously helped, and that we open the door to more help and make that practical. And so my goal in that is to empower the client, to empower the person that's there, as opposed to foster dependence or any of that nonsense, but just to recognize we are all hardwired for intuition. Let's just open the door to that further.
Do you feel that from your own experience and from all of the different people that you have worked with and continue to work with, that we come in with certain goals in mind for each lifetime?
Yeah. Not a casual lifetime, this one, huh?
No.
Not casual. But it's
Right.
a thing. Well, this gets into a big thing, which is context. The context for right now is really unsubtle, which is everyone's changing. No one's standing still. And the difference perhaps right now is that as spiritually minded people, we get to choose our changes. We get to use intention around that. And also, as spiritually minded people, this is not about separation, but it's a little bit acknowledging separation, that we're in a leadership role because we're paying attention, and that we know that more is possible. We know that the meanness is temporary, and that we're evolving, and that we're here right now with intention. And that very simply, with blessings to everyone, not everyone's going to change at once. That if we think of, I know there's a joke about it, but it's true, since David Bowie died in January 2016, everything has changed. And so many people have transitioned. Then the pandemic and this, that. So life has changed a lot. So maybe we look at this as there's a lot of, entertainment and talk about the apocalypse. Maybe the apocalypse has already happened. Maybe the apocalypse is that it's no longer okay to be unconscious. And we're
Totally.
witnessing in the response to that, and blessings to everyone, a lot of people going into an obedience cycle and giving away their power as quickly as possible. And what if we're doing the opposite of that? And you create a space called Seeking Center, and that we create spaces where we share information, that we recognize the power of community, that we recognize we never talk about the evolution of spirituality. Like the guru thing is like just dead and gone. It's focusing on let's do this together. Let's share information. Let's create spaces to do this together.
Yeah, and I was going to say in your readings,
Mm-hmm.
what I would imagine is that when you were talking about helping the person who's coming to open up their own channel so that they can start receiving, I feel you set that intention so that all of a sudden they are becoming more aware of what's already been there. They just
Yeah.
weren't aware enough of what
Mm-hmm.
they can actually start to receive and also discover about themselves in terms of why they are where they are,
Yeah.
or what may be available to them in terms of healing, which
Yeah.
is just so beautiful. And what I would love for people to understand is that you really, because you set that intention and because you have this experience and you are doing this of service, you are able to help facilitate that.
For sure. And everything right now is about trauma. Everything's about trauma. If we think of what is our role right now, spiritually minded people, it's to heal ourselves, it's to recognize all the different layers of trauma that are present and how rapidly we could heal trauma, which is mainly through acknowledgement, which is like, this happened. I'm so sorry that happened. And just seeing how we could make it not so daunting and recognizing that we're all doing this right now. And we have more ways than ever to address trauma, but recognizing the role of spirituality with that, which is like, let's create a world where those things never happen again.
I love that.
Let's create a world where everyone thrives, no one gets lost, and that there's no violence. Let's do that.
I think it all goes back to what you were saying at the very beginning about that unspoken truth, how so many of us carry that in our own lives that have happened to us that we just push aside, and how we're really just, we learn to discard that and move past it without speaking it. And yes, we still carry it. You even do work, Mark, don't you, like with past lives as well? Because a lot of us are carrying that trauma from our past lives, from our ancestors, from our day-to-day experiences. It just goes so deep. Can you talk about how you work with people in that way?
Yeah, past lives reveal that we've been here before and we know how this place works. And with Ancestry, it's just understanding the story of what happened. Human history, as we've talked about, has been incredibly violent, especially toward women, and recognizing what has happened in their family's history. And with Ancestry, it's recognizing most people know maybe 1% or 2% of their ancestors. The rest are strangers. But if we look at human history, I was watching a documentary about Greek civilizations, which is this civilization thrived for 10,000 years. Then they were conquered and became slaves. Well, what happened there? How awful. And all the war. And just seeing what has that created in ourselves, which is terror. Let's turn off the light switch of terror. And how do we know that we're safe? And it's getting into, in both past lives and ancestral healing, getting to a space of recognizing that all the different iterations that we're connected with in our souls are on our sides, that they're advocating for us, that the myth that we have that our ancestors are mortified by our lives is not true, that the purpose of having descendants is the hope that they will do better, and that we are the descendants who are doing better. They're not hung up like women are wearing pants, they're not. But also recognizing that perhaps they're thrilled with our lives, our past lives and our ancestors, which is like, oh, they have indoor plumbing.
So true.
It's true. So just seeing, we live in a great time and we're really distracted with all this crap, all this meanness. And what if we focus? So if we think of the main goal of spirituality is to create space. And so with past lives, with Ancestry, with anyone who's an empath, with mediumship, the whole goal is relief and to create space and to recontextualize what's available to us.
And by doing all of that, you walk around knowing you're not alone in all these different fields.
All these different fields. Yeah, this is the main thing, what you just said, Robin, is that we know that we're not alone and that we're not the only one to contend with this. Also, I do think it's just worth, because these things can seem daunting. Let's move things 1%. Let's not try to kick open the door. Kick open the door does not work. That's just going to slam shut again. Let's create some space. Let's work with muscle and just recognize what's there. Perhaps one of our overall goals in spirituality is to shift it from a concept to an experience. And I'm hearing with gratitude in listening to the meditations that you have, that maybe you've had that experience, that the world's big and just how quickly we can get there. But it's not cookie cutter. There's not one way. It's so individual for us. Honor the individual.
Yes.
And you also do say, and I'm glad you clarified that, talk about the 1%.
Yeah.
And
sure.
not forgiving somebody fully or not doing something 100%. It's just taking, and Robin and I talk about that all the time, and how this journey is not a sprint. It's about literally just taking one small step at a time. And sometimes you take a couple steps backwards and
Yeah.
that's okay too.
Hmm.
But it's not trying to do it all at one moment and get to some perfect destination. It's just walking it.
I appreciate you saying that. I think there's two things. One, there's this idea that to be spiritual, you have to be perfect. Let's take that off the table. And why is it that learning has gotten deprioritized or like taken off the table? Let's learn. Like we're
Totally.
learning, especially as adults, let's learn. And recognizing that mistakes lead to wisdom, that we're learning here. The world
Yes.
is changing right now. The old reference points are off the table, which could be disconcerting to people. But let's trust what we know to be true, that love works. And it's okay to create things. It's okay to do this together.
Absolutely. And it goes back to ritual. It really does, which we
Mhm.
talked about early on in this conversation. And it is that to me, it's just being consistent. And so it's in the small ways, starting small so that you stick with it.
Indeed.
I also love that you offer these group meditations as well, Mark, because I think we've also talked about the power that there is in the group to bring in the energy together and how the impact that that can have on us as a community versus just being the individual feeling by ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about that?
In terms of being of service, I've just been strongly engaged for the last year in the meditation app Insight Time. We're doing live events there. And what's thrilling about that is it's international. So there's people from Australia, New Zealand, England, Germany, Nairobi, Romania, Colombia. And it's just thrilling. And it just has this visceral experience of like, hey, we're not the only ones. We're not shouting in the dark and working as a global community. And in that space, sharing techniques to clear energy. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 meters of unconditional love, individualizing energy, but also praying for peace, visualizing being on a peaceful planet, and just sharing those experiences together and actually doing it. And so perhaps one of my goals is to fill the blanks, like fill in the blanks, and perhaps the articulation of what a peaceful planet might look like is something that we could build together. For me, it is a space where our focus is different, that there's no threats. So our nervous systems are constantly, and won't that be great that we all express ourselves creatively, that we create a generation of kids who aren't traumatized, that everyone's honored, that we circulate generosity. We're seeing these things now on the planet a bit. We're seeing people who are being very generous, which is in stark contrast to those who are hoarding. It's a really stark contrast. So,
Yeah. You can see it and feel the extreme.
yeah.
I love, Mark, that you remind us all that this planet can be a peaceful one.
Yeah.
We've lived, all of us, and for the most part, our ancestors have lived on a planet that did not have that, that does not know that, that only knows that fear and trauma. I love that reminder that there is the potential that we actually could have a planet that was all about love, unconditional love for each other. It feels so out of reach sometimes, but it's not. Anything's possible, and utilizing all of these things that you've been talking about is the way to get us energetically aligned. It makes me feel hopeful that there is the possibility of that actually happening.
The question I would pose is, are you done? I'm not done. We're not done. And perhaps one thing that we're contending with now, especially in America, is a relationship with authority and discernment. And aren't we a little fed up with the people who are currently quote unquote in charge? They're having different conversations than we are. Their focus is different. And what if we focus on people? And we all want, every single person on the planet wants peace and love. Our methods are different. Let's just get into a space where what if we all invest in creating a peaceful planet and indeed having hope? And maybe the hope feels really good.
And how empowering. We have access to
Mm-hmm.
that in our lives. Like we have access to love. We have access to hope. We have
Mm-hmm.
access to peace and to sharing that with others.
Yeah.
And it feels so much better than the alternative, than
Well,
fear. And
yes, and back to the we're not done yet. We all have a role to play.
All of
We
us.
can make that choice
Mm-hmm.
of, no, this is who I'm going to be. This is the energy that I'm going to project into the world, and
Mhm.
knowing that I'll find you and you and you and you and you,
Yeah.
and with all of us together, there's a power, a good power that we can
Mhm.
all tap into together.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. There's a simple thought, which is, or an affirmation, which is, I use my power for good. And I think we are very accustomed to and fed up with people who don't use their power for good.
That's right.
The folks who don't use their power for good are panicked, that they are desperate. And let's just trust this is a simple shift into, let's focus on people. Let's be kind. Let's be generous. Let's take care of each other.
Oh, I feel so blessed to be where I am right now, talking to you, talking to Karen,
Mhm.
and knowing that we were brought together on purpose. And that if
Mhm.
we're brought together, we can be brought together with others that feel the same way. And that is so encouraging
Yeah.
because we have that intention with you to be of
Mhm.
service, to help others, to create a planet of peace and
Mhm.
love.
I love that we are always talking about the connecting of the dots, which is all these modalities and practices that have been around forever and ever, all these angels and guides that we have access to forever and ever that many of us didn't even know about. And so I love this idea of connecting the dots in this conversation, being
Mhm.
about connecting with each
Mhm.
other, of bringing
Mhm.
the light of who we are
Mhm.
together
Yeah,
for good, as you say, Mark, and
indeed.
that we have power to do so individually and collectively.
Yeah, we have power and agency, and this would include everyone who's watching
I
this.
was just going to say, everyone who's watching or
Everyone,
listening, if
everyone.
you're, it's on purpose. There's a reason that you were brought
Yeah.
to this episode,
Mhm.
and there's an energy here for all of us, no matter when you listen or watch.
That's
Exactly.
right.
And coming back to unconditional love. So conditional love is you, not you. The opposite. That's so adolescent. That unconditional love is everyone, everyone. And recognizing, let's do this together. We already are.
What is the best way for people to work with you?
Easy access. It's,
Yeah.
it's, there's a bunch of meditations on YouTube and also under my name, Mark Mezadourian, and also on Insight Timer. There's live events there, at least 2 a week, often 3. And the goal is to gather with that. I also, on my website, markmezadourian.com is a good way to connect if anyone wants an individual reading. There's a link to my schedule there on Calendly, and also do live events. I'm going to be in Connecticut and in San Jose and things like that in Los Angeles later in the year. So yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have all of that information within our show notes. And we know this is just the first of many collaborations,
Mhm.
conversations
Mhm.
with you. Thank you so much for all that you are, all that you're doing. Really grateful.
You're welcome. Thank you both for creating this space, for your heart-centered intelligence, and for having the conversations that you're having and creating this space, Seeking Center. This is an answered prayer, in terms of what's needed, which is community. The people are clamoring for community and don't always know where to go. And it's important that we gather and that we share.
Agree.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Mark,
you.
thank you for
Mhm.
being here.
Welcome.
And thank you for everything that you're doing. You've really inspired and touched us in a very special way. So this conversation has just amplified that even more. So we really appreciate you being here.
I'm very grateful for that and appreciate you both, but also, once again, everyone who's going to engage with this, that we all matter and that everyone's significant and that let's bring the kindness and lightness to the world.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.